Okay, hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Captain's Vlog. I'm today joined by Sarah Van Sickle. Sarah, hello.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Pleasure, or bonjour, as I should say. Sarah's in
Yes,
France.
yes, exactly. We're based in Paris.
Brilliant. Sarah, if you could just start by giving us a little bit about yourself and what it is that Topo does.
Yeah, sure. So, as for me, I actually, fun fact, because today we're starting to talk about SaaS and all that good stuff, but I actually got my career started off at UNESCO, where I worked on partnerships with private tech companies and UNESCO on specific initiatives for women's development. So, completely different world. I switched place. Yeah, I switched place and started working then in SaaS about 4 or 5 years ago, specifically with AirCall, where I led the partnership with Salesforce. And so at AirCall, we said Salesforce ecosystem, meaning not just Salesforce directly, but also all of their channel partners and SIs who work within that space. And then more recently, I left to join Topo, like you said, to head up partnerships and marketing. And Topo is a buyer engagement platform that helps B2B sellers better connect with their buyers in order to accelerate closing. And we say platform because we go beyond just sharing content and the contracts and different things that maybe salespeople need in their process. But we're really going to go in, we're going to automate, we're going to suggest, and we're going to really alleviate a lot of the admin work of the salesperson on a day-to-day basis.
Got it. Okay, brilliant. That makes sense. So Topo, I guess, is letting Salesforce do what it does best, and then this is coming in to make sure that the rep is on track and doing what they can do best.
Exactly. Our idea is that we're going to work as a collaborative space, right, with the buyer and with the seller. And we're going to put all that information, all of that interaction that you could possibly imagine having with your customer and putting it directly into Salesforce, which can allow you to set certain triggers, different KPIs to help you really better understand what's going on in your pipe.
Yeah, brilliant. Now, I think firstly, before we continue, there's some congratulations in order. We've seen that this week Topo's been accepted into the Winter 2024 batch of Y Combinator, so congratulations for that. How's it been since that announcement?
It's been crazy. It's been so quick. Thank you so much as well, like for the thanks. The whole team is very, very excited. We found out a few weeks ago, and the whole team was just sitting there. We were waiting for the call from San Francisco, and then we got it. And we were looking at Dan, our CEO, we were looking at his face, trying to understand what was going on, if the feedback was positive or negative. And it ended up being positive. And we were just really, really happy and very happy to share that with our community.
Brilliant. So what is that actually gonna mean for Topo and the team, like moving forward? What does that enable you to do?
Yeah, so the big thing is that right now, as you said, we're based in Paris. So we are going to be picking up shop. We're going to be moving to San Francisco in the beginning of the year to work with the entire YC team and specifically with our different advisors. So for us, what that means is obviously, from a business perspective, an acceleration on the American market. Right, so U.S. marketplace, it's huge. We want to crack into it, and we want to get in there early. And so, obviously, leveraging the different contacts, the different network that we'll have around us with YC is going to be key to help us do that from the beginning. And then on the tech side, what we're learning to do is really, or what we're striving to do, is really to develop this idea of a buyer engagement platform. So again, going beyond just the sharing of content and tracking of content, but thinking more of how can I use AI within this space? How can we suggest different content, different things that salespeople can use, can create, different next steps, things that maybe their buyers want to see. So how can we bring that next level of intelligence into sales?
Yeah, brilliant. And if I may pry, what does the process look like for applying to Y Combinator and generally being successful? What loops did you have to run through if you can go back that far?
Yeah, so I mean, there's different rounds, right? So first, you're going to do like a video application that can only last a minute. I think that's the biggest thing that came as a takeaway from YC was that everything is very quick, right? So you have to do your pitch very quickly, be convincing. Next, you're going to go into a live interview if you pass on to the next round, and that only lasts about 15 minutes. right? So you have to be
Wow.
extremely effective, very,
Yeah.
very on it, understand exactly what your value added is and be able to express that. So really my best advice to anybody out there is, one, to apply, because, if you don't apply, you'll never get in, right? So take the chance and do it. It's also, even if you don't get in, I think it's a great experience of learning how to really hone your message and how to learn how to express that effectively. And then my second piece of advice is just practice, right? Keep practicing, keep doing it over and over again, repeating. We spent, a few hours testing different types of questions that they could ask during the 15 minutes and correcting each other on how we could be better in responding. So practice makes perfect.
It is, yeah, definitely, and it's an interesting point there. I mean, as marketers, we absolutely know that it's harder to say things in less words, isn't it?
Oh,
So
it's so challenging. Yeah.
that 1 minute video, that would be a nightmare for me to
Oh,
get
yeah. Yeah,
out
yeah,
with
because
that. So much you want to
exactly.
talk about.
Yeah, exactly. There's so much that you want to come across, and then the question is, okay, like, really, what's the priority here, right? So it really forces you to make a strategic decision, which is why it's so good of an exercise. So.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do they prize much into like your usual business metrics for traction and things like that, or is it more about the idea?
Yeah, they do look into how you're doing in terms of business, and they are definitely concerned with your objectives. So YC is going to go after people, let's say, who are bold, companies who are really putting themselves out there, trying to put high objectives, and who are actually on their way to attain them. So definitely keep that in mind, right, when you're pitching. And even if, because YC, you don't necessarily have to already be, let's say, commercializing. You can maybe just be pitching an idea, right? They also do take some companies who are earlier than maybe where Topo is today. And so in that case, I would say it's more about maybe your timeline, maybe the number of beta users, things like that. So it depends on where you are when you decide to apply.
Yeah, that makes sense. And is the whole team moving out there and staying there?
The whole team is moving and staying out there. So we managed to
Yeah.
get a house
Wow.
in San Francisco. We are all going to be staying in this house. We're excited. If any of your users have any recommendations for San Francisco, you can let us know. I'm American, but it'll be my first time out west, so I'm looking forward to that. And then, the rest of the team is French. So this is going to be a very, let's say, fun and interesting cultural experience for all of us.
Yeah, yeah. From Silicon Santier to Silicon Valley. What a change.
Exactly. You got it.
Well, yeah, congratulations again. And yeah, audience, if there's any houses out there, in San Francisco, drop it in the comments.
Let us know.
Sarah, so obviously it sounds like you've already done a load with Topo, but you've only been in the role for a couple of months. So firstly, how's that been being dropped in at the deep end of this respect? Has it been crazy?
Yeah, definitely crazy. I mean, I think anybody who's come in, I mean, right, it's always the case when you come into a company that's already been started. I think it's more the case when you come into a startup. So Dan and Rob and I, the co-founders, we've been in conversation for a long time. We used to work together at Aircall. That's how we know each other. And I knew I wanted to eventually come work with them and start this adventure, but we were trying to work on the right timing, right? So then we eventually found that, worked it out. I came right after the summer vacation in September, October. And we jumped headfirst into it, running a million miles per hour. So obviously the thing that was the most difficult for me, I think, in the beginning was understanding, okay, what has been created, what has been done today, and then what do I need to do, right? Especially when it comes to partnerships. Because I was coming from a place where if I wanted things like a one-pager or a demo video, it was there already created for me. I just had to go and push it out. Now I would get to a conversation with my partner, they'd be like, well, cool, send me some materials over. And I'd say to Dan, okay, well, yeah, like, what do we have? And he's like, well, that's your job, actually. So time for you to go create some things. So, I mean, it can be overwhelming. It's also very exciting because now having that, let's say, mindset of maybe things that I wanted before, things that I wanted to see the way I wanted to see it be done from my experience as a salesperson, as a partnership person, now I can go and create that, right? So that's really cool. Now the game is just about really prioritizing and understanding what is going to be the best return for the investment of my time. Because obviously, I'm just one human. I can't, unfortunately, spend all my time with all of my partners, even though I'd love to do so. I can't do every single marketing initiative. So we really need to step back and measure that and understand really what's going to make the difference for Topo moving forward.
This is Mudge, CEO of RocketPhone.ai. And as CEO, this means Mudge is often away from his desk. Mudge uses his mobile for all kinds of business calls, but it's a pain to remember the outcomes and keep his CRM updated. So that's why we built RocketCell. With our eSIM, all you need to worry about is having great conversations. No need for an app, just make and receive calls like normal. RocketCell records, transcribes, and analyzes each conversation, automatically logging it in Salesforce with a recording, transcript, call summary, coaching tips, and much more. Join the waitlist today and experience the world's first business mobile network for Salesforce.
And how do you do that prioritization? Obviously, Topo is quite a new company. This role is new. What are you drawing on to kind of give you that insight of what will work, or if at all?
So I would break that up into two. Let's say I want to answer that question kind of in two parts. So the first answer to it is, let's say from like an organizational point of view, when deciding what to do within your day or what action to take forward, I think you always need to say like, okay, this is something that's going to get me a quick win, and this is something that's going to be important in the long term. And it's important that you go back and forth and are able to do both, because if you're too focused on the quick win, then you're going to eventually lose line with your strategy, right? So you always need to be threading that back. And same thing, if you're very strategy focused, well, then you're never going to be actually doing, right? And in a startup, we need to do, we need to sell, we need to get our company out there. So making sure that that's really being effectively woven throughout your day is important. Then when it comes to actually like really nitty gritty, like how do I decide what I'm doing? So a lot of it comes from prior experience, understanding, okay, this was effective with partners before, I think this is going to be effective next. Studying, right, taking data on what our prospects, what our clients are asking for, even if we're just in the beginning stage already, that's extremely, extremely helpful. And then I would say just like a little tip for myself is I tag and I color coordinate my Google Calendar. And so that helps me really understand where I'm spending my time. Right? So every single day I understand, okay, I spent a lot of time this week on channel partnerships. Maybe I need to back off, spend some more time on marketing next week. Or how is alliance partnerships doing, right? I can pick up and move and be a little bit more flexible because I have a better understanding of where my time and my energy is going.
That's actually a really great time management hack there of using Google. I mean,
super helpful, and it's pretty.
It is, yeah. I mean, I always encourage my our SDRs to say like have a block for email, have a block for calling. But of course, in any job, it's really valuable if you can block up your calendar. Not only are you focusing yourself of when you do the work, you actually then get to see the metrics afterwards and say,
exactly.
Okay, I'll spend way too long on this.
Exactly. No, it's super important because, that's the thing. If you realize too, like, okay, maybe I spent 5 hours on X action and it only gave me Y result. Well, then you say, okay, well, next time I'm not going to do that. That didn't really work, or I'm going to find another way of doing it that's a bit more efficient. So yeah, understanding your role within the process is important.
And maybe you spent that long on it because it was easy or fun. But again, if it's not getting the return, can it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, unfortunately, it is like that. You always got to see what's actually coming from what you do.
And so, what are the speaking of that? I mean, what are the things that you found? What activities have you found that really work to get leads from, let's say, Salesforce as a partner we're using at the moment? What are they? What are the high performing activities that work with a partner relationship with Salesforce?
Yeah, so Salesforce specifically or partnerships in general? Salesforce specific?
Both.
Both? Okay. So if we're talking about partners in general, the key thing to driving leads is to make it easy for them, right? You want to take, as the PAM, you want to take a lot of the responsibility, right, on your shoulders. So that way your partner, all that they need to focus on is identifying opportunities and selling. So with that, there's different levers that you can pull. So one of them can be partner marketplaces. It's always a good idea to have a page, to have your logo, to have UTM links in place so you can track these leads, all that good stuff. It sounds like a bit like checking the boxes and, oh, is that actually really going to generate anything? But it's really important to have that base. And the reason why is because, like in the example of Salesforce, when I go and when I'm talking to an AE and I say, hey, it would be great if we could co-sell together, one of the first things they're going to do is go on the App Exchange and check and see if I'm actually listed and see if I'm a real partner, right? And if I'm not, then there's not a whole lot of interest in them working with me. So yeah, setting that foundation is pretty critical. The next thing is being very, very clear about your ICP and finding ways to correctly and effectively express that to your partner. I think a lot of people are scared of saying something like, oh, we focus on manufacturing, FinServe, and high tech, right? And then being scared that that's going to cut off other industries. But it's actually the opposite effect, because when you're able to really correctly express how your solution is perfect in a particular use case or industry, then it empowers your partner to more easily identify opportunities for you. If you rest super vague all the time, they're not going to be able to do anything for you, right? They're not going to have that trigger in mind. So what I always try to do is come up with very key examples of how, for example, they can find an opportunity for Topo. Like, when does it come into place and when should they recommend us? And so that helps more deals flow in, even though I'm actually being more specific.
And that's actually a great way of doing it, because taking the example of Salesforce, they segment their AEs into industry verticals. So why try and cover everything? Whereas you can make it super niche, and they know exactly what that industry needs.
Exactly. And when you're getting started with Salesforce as a partner, it's really, really important to remember that. I mean, it's a massive company, right? It's a massive ecosystem. So don't be afraid to say, you know what, I'm going to focus on just SMB, or I'm going to focus on just everybody in the insurance vertical, right? That's going to make you more effective. It's going to create buzz internally among those AEs. And so then when an AE says, hey, do you know a digital sales room that's really great for mid-market size companies, right? Then somebody's going to recommend Topo because they have that previous experience with us and they can speak for us internally. So yeah, creating that echo effect. That's what I always talk about. Creating the echo effect with your partners is really, really important.
And if you can translate that into other activities in your marketing mix, so every event that you do, every bit of collateral is hyper-focused on those niches, it just reinforces that message every single time, doesn't it? And that can be shared with your partners to use and share around as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the more specific you can be in your message, the better that they can engage with it, because you're meeting them in a space of shared understanding. I think we can maybe put it that way. It's going to speak more to them because that's who they're selling to every day. That's the language that they're using. If I share with a Salesforce AE a one-pager about the fintech sector and they're working on media, right? It might not really work for them and for their clients and what they're seeing every day. So yeah, always meeting them where they are.
Yeah. So how are you kind of reinforcing these relationships and partnerships? Is it just a case of meeting up, messaging, saying, "Hey, this is our positioning, this is our product, this is why we're great"? And how do you kind of reinforce that? We're here, Topo here, we exist. How do you keep them top of mind?
Yeah. So I mean, there's two ways, right? Because there's the bottom up and then the top down approach. And ideally, you're going to be doing both. So by bottom up, what I mean is, for example, what we do is every time I find an opportunity where Salesforce is involved, I'm going to message the AE and say, hey, Bob, I saw that, we're working on a deal with one of your clients. I'd love to take some time with you to see like how maybe we can sync, right? To get you that ACV, get you that rev share before the end of the year. Here's what I think you would touch from that deal if we sign. What do you think about taking 15 minutes to do it, right? So that's what I do. Then I'll sit down with the AE, talk with them, explain to them the deal, but also take the time to pitch to them Topo and show them what we do. And then say, by the way, it'd be great if you have any other clients or prospects who you think could benefit from a solution like this. And if you want, we can even take another 15 minutes a few weeks down the road to really go through and better understand, who we can co-sell to, right? And so that normally really hooks them in. It gets them really engaged from the outset, especially because they see the immediate benefit, which is that revenue sharing. And then from there, what I always try to do as a PAM is keep them updated on the sales cycle. So saying, hey, thanks, first of all, thank you. Thank you for the introduction that you did for me. Thank you for the recommendation, right? It went a long way. Always saying thank you is nice. Then updating them, how did the demo go? What are our next steps? It's these little things, that they really appreciate because they feel like then they're not left in the dark. So that's the bottom up approach. And then from top down, this is where we're going to be engaging more with Salesforce leadership. Maybe we're talking more about different marketing events, things like that. And that's also equally important. So being present at events like Dreamforce or the World Tour or things like Partner Day at Salesforce. And I know those things can be very, very expensive. It's not sometimes possible for everybody to be involved, but you can always find different ways to hack it, right? So like a popular one is... go as an attendee, right? Set some time apart to organize a coffee, right? That costs very little. Or, if you do have, let's say you have maybe a 2 to 3, 5K budget, something like that, but you can't go the whole 20K that is a world tour. You can always organize a cocktail, for example, or a breakfast beforehand, to meet up with people, right? So that way you're meeting with the other people at the event. They know that there's something going on and you're really engaging and working with those AEs. So it's another good thing to think about when we think about the cadence of when we're stepping in and when we're actually interacting with these AEs and the leadership at Salesforce more from a bulk message rather than just individually.
Yeah, I mean some great tips there. Concentrating back on the bottom up approach. Into the nitty gritty. How are you finding out the AE of the prospect? Is that a case of asking the prospect or doing something sneaky?
That's the hard one. So a lot of people ask me this question, and there's so many different ways that you can do it. So if you're somebody, right, who has been working with Salesforce a lot, you know that what happens is pretty much around every February, they're going to reorganize their accounts. Right? Afterwards, the A's hold these accounts for the entire year. So if you're tracking previously who's working with what account, and so either you're like me, you've been working with them for years and you actually remember it because you're just creepy, or you actually have it written down, you have it stored in your Salesforce, in your CRM. You can always refer back to those notes. I think it's super important that partnership professionals have specific fields that are dedicated to them within their CRM where they can store partnership notes to fall back on. So that's thing number one. The official route is if you're an ISV partner, you have a PAM. Normally, you can request that an introduction from the PAM. They'll provide that intro for you, and then you write something what they call as a basho email, so like an introductory email to your solution explaining what you are, what you do, the rev share that the AE would touch, and then the context of the op in question, right? So that's the official context. The unofficial route, which I also think is good, is just asking AEs maybe who you already know, right? So pinging them saying hey, maybe somebody you worked with on a previous deal or a friend, I don't know, and you say, hey, I'm looking for the AE who manages this. Do you know who that is? Could you put me in contact? And normally they're always willing to help out, especially if it's going to be beneficial for a mutual customer.
It'll all come around eventually as well, won't it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, there's nothing, normally I've rarely had an experience with an AE at Salesforce who does not want to talk to me about co-selling. Normally, they're always pretty interested in it because the deal is pretty good for them, right? They get 15% of the annual revenue. And all that they need to do is kind of help facilitate conversation and be there to support if needed.
So how much do you see as rev share as a motivator for AEs, for example? And like,
Yeah.
you know, to play devil's advocate to some extent, if I was an AE, there could be an element of me thinking, I don't want this ISV app getting involved because that's taken away from the Salesforce pot if the customer kind of bundles it all into one.
Sure. Yeah, it's a good point. And what I would say to that is rev share is important, but it's not everything, right? Yeah. So I think it's important. I think it's important to be an official ISV partner for other reasons other than rev sharing, right? There's also things around security, for example, ease of use, being able to work with the same SIs, for example. All of that are benefits of working with an ISV partner. So there's a certain level of trust there. Aside from the revenue sharing, I think other things that are important to consider is how does your tool, for example, help a Salesforce AE sell more Salesforce? So, for example, if they are going to position Topo, does that mean that they could potentially also position something like Slack or like CPQ, right? Which we can also work with. So that's just one example. When I was or like a good one for telephony, right? Is okay, if they are on Sales Cloud today, maybe with the phone, they can also position something on Service Cloud, right? That's a really common one, I think, for CTIs. So yeah, that's super important to consider. And then the third thing is really about trust and accountability, right? So the better you are as a PAM, like I said, doing those follow-ups, keeping them up to date on what's happening with an opportunity, providing them with the resources maybe that they need. So things like contracts or even just like videos, different like marketing materials, right? The more they're going to be eager to work with you because they know that they can trust you in the deal. And so rather than pushing maybe a tool, because Salesforce has so many tools, right? So many solutions. So maybe rather than pushing one that's homegrown, that can be more of a difficult sell, they're going to work with a partner who they trust and who they know can get the job done.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, actually. So we've discussed all the rosy elements of partnerships. What are some of the key challenges you've encountered or encountering?
Yeah, there can be. I mean, there's a lot that you can come up with as an ISV. I think too, because I was thinking about this question, and I think a lot of it has to do with, I think, let's say, like, as Salesforce, there's different stages of partnerships. And I think there's different pains that come off at each stage. So for example, with what I just went through with Topo, we went through the security review at Salesforce in order to be listed on the App Exchange. So it's a super important requirement where Salesforce is having a third party actually test your solution to make sure it's super, super secure and functioning with Salesforce in the most effective way possible. And it takes a really long time. And the way they manage that process is it goes to an external party, they check it, they find something that they want you to fix, they send it back to you, you fix it, you send it back, and then they start all over again, right? So it's not like they're going to check the entire solution from A to Z and then tell you, okay, you need to fix all of these things. They do it one by one, which is why it's a pretty painful process. So yeah, that's probably more of a product thing, right, that you're going to experience maybe in the beginning. I think as you grow, a pain that's probably going to come across is how do I get in front of these AEs? When is the right time to do so? And the secret is that there's really never a good time, right? So it's never a good time to talk to an AE. Either it's the end of the month, or it's the end of their quarter, or they're on vacation, or you're on vacation. Somebody's on paternity leave, right? Like something happens, and we can't talk. So the main thing is just it's about being consistent, being there. Also having a lot of, and I think this is really important for partnerships people, having a lot of empathy in your job. Saying, okay, I know that this is maybe what the situation is for them right now. Maybe it's not the best time for me to harass them. maybe it's good for me to reach out, in 2 weeks or next month, whatever it is. I think another, let's say, like, pro tip is to keep in mind the way people like to communicate. So I have some A's who really prefer talking to me on Slack. I have others who prefer email, others who prefer calling. And I always tried to respect that when I was working with them. And a part of the reason was because obviously it made the relationship better, but also it meant that I was getting responses from them much quicker. So
Yeah. So what I'm learning here is that a lot of the the power that you can I'll start again. Well, what I'm learning here is the importance of holding a lot of information in your head, just like knowing these nuances of what each AE likes and their channels and things like that. I mean, that's probably an underappreciated skill.
yeah, in your head or in your CRM, right? Like, you can write
Of
these
course.
notes down. I mean,
Yeah.
not to do like an ad for Salesforce, but you can write these things down. You can store them somewhere. Yeah, I know what I used to do too. What was very helpful was we mapped, right, the entire Salesforce org. So I understood, like, okay, within the SMB high tech team, I have met within the past week 5 out of 6 A's, and the relationship is rated, from like very good to very bad, right? But there, I can add, hey, this person really prefers to be called, or this person always uses WhatsApp, right? There's certain things that you can also write down to remember.
Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant. Now, obviously, Salesforce isn't Topo's only kind of partner channel,
No.
but talk to me a little bit about what you see as the importance of building a specific strategy for a specific partnership, because obviously one thing doesn't work for everything.
Yeah, exactly. No, I mean, you're completely right. Partnerships are not rip and replace. So you need to, like I said before, it's about kind of empathy, understanding for your partner, for their context and where they are. And that can even boil down to things like language, right? Like, even the language that Salesforce uses is going to be different than the language that they use at HubSpot, right? So being aware of that when you're working with them as a partner
Well,
is
I mean,
super important.
leads, contacts, opportunities. That's
Exactly.
that's a prime example.
Exactly. And so if you go to, a Salesforce person and you talk about the importance of creating a ticket, it's not going to speak to them quite as much, right? So being aware of yourself, how you're positioning your tool, how you're positioning what you're doing is really critical. I would say also what's important with that is the strategy for how we sell. And I think this is really what sets Salesforce apart as a partner in terms of everything that they do with the planning around selling. So they're going to be looking at things a year out, right? They're saying, okay, I think next year, 2 years from now, I'm going to position Pardot or Service Cloud, right? So understanding the length of time that it can take in order to effectively sell with your partner is really critical to evaluating its success. Because, for example, a partner that can be, let's say, more inbound quick win oriented, like HubSpot, you can see a return on that much quicker. Something like Salesforce is going to take a little bit more time. It's a little bit of a heavier lift.
Absolutely. And do you see a difference in the effectiveness of partnership marketing in terms of size of customer? Like, if it's just a 5-seat deal, how much of an influence is partner marketing within that?
So are you asking, is partnership marketing still influential for small deals? Or are you asking, can partnership marketing make small deals larger? Or both?
Probably the first.
The first.
In some
Uh,
situations.
yeah, I mean, I would say it's still really important, even though it can be important in different ways, right? Like, I'm thinking of a million different scenarios that a small opportunity could come in thanks to partnership marketing. So, like, for example, one that I had recently, there's a very large company in France, but they had one team that was struggling with their tool, and the AE knew me well. He knew Topo, and so he came to me and he said, "Look, it's not the entire company; it's just this team. but I saw, the presentation, the one pager, the video that you previously shared with me, and I thought that you could be a great fit. So can I put you in contact? Right? So that's an example, right, of getting into maybe a larger account that then you can later expand into. Partnership marketing can be particularly effective at that because you're sharing these documents that AE can keep for a very long time and pull out when they need it. The second thing, if we're talking more about like velocity deals, what's good about velocity is when it happens en masse. You want to get a lot of velocity all the time. If you just got like 1 or 2 velocity deals here and there, that's not so amazing. And this is why partner marketplaces are particularly effective, right? Because you're in a space where you're going to speak specifically to Salesforce users on the app exchange. So they're going to come in, they're going to say, I'm looking for a digital sales room. They're going to find Topo, and they're going to be able to install it and start using it right away. So that's a certain level of visibility and an offering that you just can't necessarily provide on a website or on Google in the way that you can on a partner marketplace.
Of course, and actually that brings me on to the question of attribution. If you're running marketing events of your own, but the kind of route to it is through the App Exchange, obviously at the final.
Yes.
How are you measuring the impact of your marketing versus Salesforce's, I guess, marketing?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I'm laughing because attribution is such a pain point in partnerships, right? I think every single partnerships person has to be like laughing right now. But thankfully at Topo, we're not necessarily at that stage yet where we're super concerned about, okay,
Right.
how is this being divided? We're a little bit too young for that, even though I have had that experience before. What I would say when it comes to attribution is obviously having the infrastructure in place to properly track your leads is really, really important. And then setting very clear rules and guidelines that are expressed, that you're very transparent about, is key. I think a lot of the times what can be difficult is that certain people think one thing, other people think another. There's no clear rule or guideline that's actually decided, and then people argue about it, right? Which is not great. So yeah, I don't know if I fully answered your question there. I don't know if there's anything you want me to go more in on.
No, I mean, I don't think there is a golden bullet answer to this problem, is it? But as
I mean,
specific.
I wish there was. I mean, because there's multiple ways that you can look at it, right? You can take on a multi-touch model, right? And you can say something along the lines of, okay, well, exactly like influence, if it's this journey versus that journey, then the partnerships team is weighted 10% or 15%, whatever it is. You can also to evaluate, and this is really important in partnerships in general, is what are the KPIs that you're actually going to follow for your team? What are their actual objectives? We have some partnerships teams today who are purely centered around the actual utilization of the app, right, or of the integration, right? So that's very much use, whereas we have others who are focused on pipe, and we have others that are focused on closed won, ARR or MRR, whatever it is. So yeah, just understanding the impact of those decisions, right? And how that influences the way your PAMs are going to behave. Because if it's going to be very pipe heavy, then what that means is that your PAM is not going to be incentivized to actually work with partners to drive closing. If they're only utilization focused, then what that means is you don't really care necessarily how new sales are doing. That's not necessarily your top priority. You're going to be more focused on customer success, customer retention. So yeah, I think establishing the KPIs, having a good structure, clearly expressing whatever the decisions you make strategically are, making sure that they're fair, making sure that they're consistent, is the best way to go, because like you said, there is no silver bullet that's going to solve everything and make absolutely everybody happy, unfortunately.
Yeah, and if there was, that would be an extremely valuable piece of marketing software.
Yes, I would sell that right away.
Sarah, this has been an absolutely fascinating conversation. Is there one piece of advice you could give to other marketing leaders out there on their ISV journey, whatever stage they're at?
Okay. My best piece of advice. Oh, I didn't think of this one. Hold on. My best piece of advice. I would say probably my best to partner marketers specifically, or to PAMs, because I would say it'd be a little bit different.
Okay, let's do partner marketers.
Partner marketers. Okay. So partner marketers, my best piece of advice would be to, how do I express this well? Okay, my best piece of advice is with partner marketers for them to put the needs, the interests of their partner at the core of what they're doing, right? While protecting their company. Right? So this is holding those two things in balance at all times is probably the best and the most important thing you can do, because if you manage to nail that, then that means that you have a really effective co-selling message that your salespeople can unite around and that they can use to then collaborate well and co-sell. So keeping that really in mind with everything that you produce and everything that you do. How is this going to be looked at, for example, by a Salesforce AE, by a Salesforce customer, by a Salesforce prospect when I am a Salesforce partner, right? And not just how does this work for me, how does this work for my company only.
Yep, brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. And before we go, I'm hoping that the audience have got quite piqued interest about what Topo is and what it can do. So is there an offer you'd like to share for the audience?
Yes. So if you come through our affiliated link with the podcast, then you will get 15% off of your offer with Topo. So be sure to reach out to us and talk with our lovely salespeople.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Sarah. Thank you for joining. It's been an honor. Thank you.
Thank you.